It is relatively rare that I reach the end of a game when I'm recording for Famidaily. Even if I'm decent at the game, I've rarely had a chance to practice. And if I get stuck at a part, it can pretty quickly eat through all my recording time. For Yume Penguin Monogatari, I finished it in just over 20 minutes. Now I have beaten it a few times before, and it is a relatively easy game, but still, that was really fast. This isn't Konami's first Penguin game. They debuted on the Famicom with a port of Antarctic Adventure, and have used the penguin from it as a mascot in several games. Depending which game's lore you're following, these are either the same penguins, or Yume Penguin Monogatari is a prequel to the other penguin games. And if you are taking the lore of games like this and Parodius seriously, don't. The plot of this game is that Penta the penguin has become fat. That makes his girlfriend run off with the most MRA-looking penguin ever. To win her back, Penga's gotta lose some weight, but the other penguin sends out his minions to shove food down Penga's throat. So in case you couldn't tell, this is an extremely fat-phobic game. And not just in the ha-ha-ha, look at this fatty shoving food in his pie hole way. No, this is a game whose direct message is, if you're overweight, you won't get love, and so you should crash diet until you're slim. As somebody who produces YouTube videos about old games, obviously I've had my struggles with weight. And also obviously, I can take a self-deprecating joke. But the attitudes of Yume Penguin Monogatari wind up being unpleasant to me. In this game, you don't have a health meter or lives. Instead, you have a weight meter and a ticking clock. The weight meter has a heart above it, and if you're above that weight when you reach the end of the stage, then you're rejected and it's game over. There are infinite continues though. If time runs out, then you put on a ton of weight and it's game over. The way you lose weight is by chugging down diet drinks that are dropped by enemies sometimes. They can also drop clocks that give you back 10 seconds. There's certain thresholds on the weight meter that when you cross them, you'll become more svelte. At the top, you're heavy. You move slowly, have a tougher time jumping when you hit the A button, and the only way that you can attack enemies is by dropping onto them by hitting B while you're jumping. In the middle range, you can move more freely and your attack becomes a kick. Finally, in the leanest range, you can shout similar to Wagyan Land and it will hurt enemies. If you manage to get it all the way down to the bottom, then you get the ability to fire 2 shouts off. The way that you gain weight is by having enemies hit you with food. You'll also see food lying around the stages, but the biggest risk is that someone will throw an apple in your mouth. So in this game, the apple that has less than 100 calories is somehow more fattening than the diet drinks, which typically have considerably more. You also put on an enormous amount of weight if you fall into the water. It basically throws you to the maximum end of the weight scale instantaneously. Coming into contact with enemies typically doesn't increase your weight. Instead, it stuns you and makes you lose a bit of time. The odd-numbered stages in Yume Penguin Monogatari are all platforming levels, while the even-numbered stages have you participate in a shoot-'em-up. This is a very slow-paced shooter, but the weight gain and loss mechanics work the same here, and you're still racing the clock, which means you will have to collect some of those from enemies. There are 2 additional power-ups in the game. The M makes you invincible for a short time, while the H does something different depending on what type of stage you collected on. During platform stages, it gives you a propeller beanie, and that lets you fly upward for a while. On the shoot-'em-up stages, the H gives you missiles, and these do extra damage. The H power-ups last until you get hit. Most of the stages have a boss at the end, and since it would be a bit unfun for you to just put on weight when you get hit by the boss, and then have no way to recover it, they also throw out a lot of diet drinks. So if you're overweight when you reach a boss, it becomes a delaying game as you wait to collect as many diet drinks as you can. However, waiting around to collect diet drinks also tends to make the bosses a bit boring. They have distinctive mechanics, but what you're really watching out for are the spread of shots that will have a bottle mixed in with them. Yume Penguin Monogatari seems to be relatively well liked in Japan, though it's mainly noted for being a very easy game. And I can't really argue with that, Even on Game Center CX, it was beaten in an hour and a half. Yume Penguin Monogatari is a very well-made game that plays decently as long as you're willing to ignore the really nasty messages behind it. And those messages go right to the ending where Penta's girlfriend puts on weight. It's not the most offensive game I've seen on the Famicom, but its version of dieting would have been a lot more harmful to the kids who played it in 1991.